behalf of Rock Title, our entire team, we're so excited and grateful to be hosting this webinar for Josh and Morgan and the Mojo team, who have developed a dynamic team with an empowering culture among all the agents and team members. The Mojo team was established in 2005 with Morgan and Josh, who have over 30 years of combined experience. So they know a thing or two, which is why they've been so successful. Both Morgan and Josh are licensed brokers and are in the top 0.5% of producers here in the Valley. As a top team in Scottsdale, they have over a dozen top producing agents who will close over $100 million and 100 transactions this year. And they were also awarded by Realty One Group the highest achievement for the last 5 consecutive years. So a little history of Morgan and Josh and the team that they've developed. And on that note, we're ready to grab some gold from you guys. I know everyone is eager to jump into today's content. Negotiating is a huge part of today's market into winning more for your clients. So any questions that you guys have, please either enter into the chat box and we'll make sure to get those answered for you towards the end. And from there, Morgan and Josh, it's all yours.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Justin. We really appreciate it. And we love our partnership with Rock Title and really appreciate you guys. And thank you for setting this up. Great information we'd love to share with
help everybody.
Yeah.
But thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate that. We really, Josh and I, we put on these webinars, for you. We like, we've received a lot of great feedback over the ones we've done before. And we know that, there's so many different things within real estate that, people struggle with and need help and assistance on. We deal with it every day with our team.
Thank you.
And, but we also want to, reach a little further out and just see if we can, pass on some tips and tricks to you guys.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if there's, we're always looking for some great agents. So if there's an agent or two on this webinar that is thinking of joining a team, please reach out to us or to Heather, our team manager. We'd love to chat with you and see if it might be a good fit.
Yep.
On that note, let's get into it. So just to give you a heads up, guys, right now we're going to go over the art of negotiation, some tips and tricks that we've learned over the years. And at the very end, we'll do the market update and give you guys what our opinions are as far as where the market's going.
Yeah.
So stay tuned. But these are all tips and tricks that we have learned over the last 17 years, things that we personally incorporate and include in our negotiations. We've negotiated obviously hundreds and hundreds of deals, and we encourage our team members to incorporate these same things into every one of their transactions. It's just good things that we've learned from books we've read and podcasts we've listened to, and hope to share that with you guys today.
Yeah, definitely. Both Josh and I are continuous students. We just are always looking for new information and everything else, but then also believe in examining and learning something from each transaction that we can then pass on, to others. Because there really is, as you know, there's multiple points in every deal where you're going to be negotiating, where you're going to be communicating with your clients and the other agents and all of that. And along each step of the way, there's also pitfalls. And so some things you can avoid by doing it better and making that next transaction go a little smoother by implementing some of the things you learned from things like this and even past transactions. So hopefully these help.
Yeah, I would say the negotiation part of real estate is probably my most exciting part of the transaction and my favorite part of the transaction. So I'm pumped and like I said, can't wait to share this stuff with you guys. So
and just real quick on that note before we get in, is negotiation sometimes has a bad connotation, like it's a fight and it has to be a back and forth. We really don't view it that way. We definitely view it as a coming together, a way to put deals together. So when Josh says he loves the negotiation, he's not saying, oh, I love the fight. So he loves making deals and putting deals together and finding common ground. It's like that puzzle piece that's going to make this picture come together.
Absolutely. Good call. Way to sum it up. So first and foremost, you have to be prepared. And before we get into that, I do want to say we are trying to give you guys principles and big picture ideas so that you can incorporate this into your business no matter what the market is. So if it's a buyer's market, seller's market, you name it, we're not trying to be very specific on this hot seller's market right now. we want to give you bigger, broader ideas that you can take away from this webinar today. And like I said, incorporate into your business every single year that goes on. Every negotiation is different. Every client's different. Every situation is different. So there's no possible way that we could get very specific on this and that of an offer. So we're going to keep it very big picture. And first and foremost, you have to be prepared.
Yeah, preparation is key.
Yep. So if you're representing the seller, you should know all the ins and outs about that property, all the comps in the area, anything that if someone were to call you up and ask you about the property that you'd be able to share, any positives that you'd be able to share with them. And just that, you are the expert. You are the market expert on that property. Same thing if you represent the buyer. You want to learn all the entire area. You want to know what the comps are. You want to know more about the house. You want to try and prepare yourself on the property that you're going to be offering or representing. Also, you want to know what your client's goals are and what their desired outcome is. And so it's important to sit down and have a lengthy conversation with your clients and find out, what they're looking to do. Some people might want to net the most amount of money they possibly can for their property. Other people may want to try and sell it and have the property closed within 30 days or less. And so it's very important to kind of know what your client, what their situation is, whether you represent the buyer or the seller, and what their desired outcomes are.
Yeah, certainly. When we prep for a negotiation too and have different things, one of the things we believe in is structuring a few options prior to talking to that buyer or talking to the seller. You want to know and have already pre-planned out a few different outcomes, choices, if you may, for that seller or that buyer. And we'll get a little more into that, but just, when we say prep, and it's market knowledge and prep and everything else too, but it's also options. Hey, if you reject this offer, we're back to square one. Here are your kind of three options. And, if you're presenting an offer, we can reject, we can accept, and we can counter. And then different structures within parts of that.
Mm-hmm. And even on that same note, it's important to maybe have a mentor or a coach or another agent or someone that you can kind of bounce ideas off of. Morgan and I were pretty lucky because we share office space together. So on pretty much every single deal, we'll pick each other's brains and say, hey, this is what we're dealing with. What are some good ideas on how to overcome it? So
it's incredibly helpful.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't have that person, try and find someone that's great, that hopefully is in real estate, that you can, like I said, bounce some ideas off of. But that's really important.
Yeah. So sometimes you may have thought that you have the perfect way to approach it, but you've missed a major blind spot. And by explaining that situation or talking with another agent, they oftentimes can help you see that blind spot or look at it just a little differently. That will be the difference between a successful deal and running into more bumps and bruises.
Yep. And also keep in mind, you want to think outside of the box when you're coming up with those multiple options, whether it's pricing, terms, whatever. You want to think outside of the box. You want to have other ideas. It doesn't just have to be pigeonholed into one specific thing. There's different ways to be able to work things out in every negotiation.
Yeah, and this is really where experience does pay off in real estate, because you've done those deals, you've thought outside of the box, and then you can draw on that, past experience of ways to get things done. Or it also pays to lean on or to bounce ideas off someone with more experience than you, so that you can draw on their knowledge and expertise of ways to get things done. As newer agents, I know sometimes you can run into a bind, and it's really helpful just to have someone who maybe has done that before, been there before.
Yep. Number 2 on the list, this is one of my favorites. Remove your emotions. Very easy for us to say, and I would definitely admit that in the first couple of years, I know, just for myself personally, in the first few years as a licensed agent, it's very easy to get emotional about situations and circumstances, and especially if the deal's not going quite right, getting upset maybe with the other agent on the other line, or even potentially with your clients. But, you've got to keep your emotions out of the transaction. There's no place for your emotions in it. It just, if anything, it's gonna kill the deal. It's gonna be a lose-lose for everyone. It hinders every negotiation.
Yep. And I'll bet you can think back if you have a transaction that went a little sour. Oftentimes there was an ego involved, someone's emotions got involved. The worst case, it's hard enough between buyer and seller. It can get really bad if it's agent and agent, and now you're in a who's bigger, who's badder kind of contest. It's just no place to be, and it's no way to get a deal done. You definitely want to remove your emotions out of it and focus on your client's goals.
Yeah, putting the deal together. I mean, we can probably all think of other agents who have gotten upset with us on the phone, or upset with the situation, or they think that the seller or buyer is being unreasonable and they're huffing and puffing on the other line. And if anything, it complicates the situation, and in the end usually ends up killing the deal. So that's probably one of the most important things out of everything we're going to discuss, but keep that in mind. Keep your emotions out of it.
Yeah, you're really here to stay level-headed, and you shouldn't be focusing on the check and the amount of money you're going to make or not going to. That is all secondary, way down the line. You're there to be the calm, cool, collected deal maker.
Mm-hmm. And if you can feel your blood pressure rising and you're about to explode or boil over, just say, hey, you know what? Let me call you back. Hang up the phone. Do whatever you got to do to explode.
It's probably a better idea, yes, to take a break.
Take a pause.
And sometimes work through it.
Once again, we're pretty lucky because we're right here in the same office with each other. So there's a lot of times where I'll hang up or Morgan will hang up, and we'll just sit there and converse with each other, trying to relieve some pressure. But keep the emotions out. It's just going to complicate the situation. It's going to complicate the deal. And in the end, like I said, it's going to be a lose-lose. So next on the list is befriend the other agent or the other party. I think this is very important. I think that, we're all deal makers. We all want to put these deals together. And so you're going to get a lot further with honey than you are with vinegar. So call up the other agent, have a great conversation with them, try to connect with them in some way, shape, or form. You don't have to be fake about it by any means, but just obviously this is the person you're going to be dealing with for the next 30 to 45 days, and hopefully they're the person who might and most likely going to be involved in making the decision on whether or not to move forward with your offer or not. So we all like to work with people that we know, like, and trust. So I would strongly recommend befriending the other agent and seeing if you can put that deal together.
Yeah, and during that time in that conversation, one of the main things you really want to do is you want to ask a lot of questions. You want to find out more about the motivations of the seller or the buyer, who are the opposite part of the transaction, and understand what it's going to take to put that deal together. You want to find out, of course, little things, when they need to close, when they move out, is there a reason? And different things like that you can then either use to present your offer, you can use to write a better offer, and being insightful with the things you talk about and ask for. You do so in a courteous, polite way. You're going to be more likely to be remembered than someone that's just kind of barking this, that, and the other thing. So it's definitely a good thing to ask a lot of questions in that time, while being friendly with the other agent.
Yeah, I mean, you want to, like I said, we all like to work with people we know, like, and trust. And if it's between you and another agent that maybe isn't so pleasant on the phone, they're probably going to lean in your direction. Or if you're asking your questions and you're trying to get information as far as what's the buyer or seller's motivation or what's the situation, most likely that other agent's going to be a lot more forthcoming with you if you are pleasant to speak with than if you, once again, just are more focused on the deal and less about them as a person. So like I said, you don't have to be fake. You can be 100% genuine. Just be your best self.
Yeah, and this is a perfect time, just real quick, to remove your emotions out of it. This might be your 5th offer in the last 2 weeks for this buyer, and damn it, you want this thing to go through. At the same time, you can't let that show. You want to let them know, obviously, the motivations of your buyer, but stay calm, cool, collected, and be friendly.
All right, next on the list after ask a lot of questions is present the offer. So this is a little tricky, and once again, can get very specific kind of depending. If you're coming in and you're offering lower than the list price, I strongly recommend that you do not try to sell the other agent. I know when agents call me up personally and they start trying to sell me on why my clients or I should accept their offer, if anything, it's just kind of like I put the wall up and start to shut down a little bit. None of us like to be sold, but there's nothing wrong with going in and explaining how you guys came up with the offer or the terms or whatever, or what the situation is. And I love to use the word fair. Hey, I spoke to my clients, we crunched all the numbers, we looked at all the comps, we took everything into consideration, and they believe that this is a very fair and reasonable offer. And that's how we came up with our number. That's how we came up with our offer.
Yeah, and like Josh said, there's a huge difference between being sold and honestly explaining why and where your client has came to their offer price and everything else. And definitely some agents try to oversell, and that's really what we're referring to here. If you're just overselling it, and those are deal killers, and also you're going to potentially turn that agent against you, and certainly the seller or the buyer in that situation. Once again, this is for a balanced market, so this goes back and forth. You want to present your reason and have it goes back to being prepared and having knowledge and everything else, because to where you're not having to oversell. Just my buyer really wants it.
Yeah.
Just,
I mean,
the reason.
Keep in mind that the listing agent, for example, they've probably already done their homework. They know all the comps. They know everything else. You don't need to go in there and explain all the comps to them and explain this and that and why they should take your offer and yada, yada. The listing agent most likely has already done all that homework. And so if anything, it becomes repetitive.
Yeah.
And then on that same note, if you are offering over and above list price, then I think it is okay to sell yourself and your clients and your offer to that agent. Explaining, going into great detail as to why your clients are so great to work with, and how much your clients love the home and everything else. I think in that situation, you are fighting to try and win that offer. So going kind of a little above and beyond, I think in that situation when you're coming over list price is great.
It's always a fine line, as you can see, between presenting all the facts and options and everything else versus overselling, that agent within that ability. So it's a little bit of a balancing act, but at the same time, take from that, as we say, you want to present the options. You do want to sell in some cases, but don't oversell it to the point of losing the other side.
Mm-hmm. And in some situations, less is more. In other markets where it would take a lot longer to sell properties, sometimes I'd put together an offer and send it over with just very minimal information. Just, hi, John, attaches an offer for your property at 123 Main Street. Please review and confirm receipt. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks, Josh. And I like to keep it short, sweet, and simple because I'm coming in with a lowball offer, or my clients are coming in with a lowball offer, and I don't think it needs a lot of explanation. So sometimes that's the best situation. And I've had people who have just signed and accepted the offer without even counting. So you don't want to give them any additional information or give them a reason to count in that situation.
Yeah, that's another thing too. Sometimes the words on the page will speak louder than anything you have to say, and you've got to know when to talk and when to shut up. To put it lightly.
Exactly.
Or be quiet. I should have said be quiet, but.
Now, on that note, when to be quiet, I would say when receiving an offer or a counter offer, if you represent the seller, obviously you'd be receiving an offer. If you represent the buyer and maybe the seller is countering your offer, once again, ask a lot of questions. I like to call every agent. When I receive an offer, I like to call every agent and ask them a lot of questions before I even go and present the offer to my client. So, I want to have a conversation. I want to know why they're countering, how they came up with that counter, if they are negotiable, if they are willing to move on any of these terms or whatever they came up with. So I like to try and get as much information as I possibly can before I even go and present it to my client.
Yeah, and this information you're collecting too, mind you, you can get into some fair housing regulation stuff and you want to avoid that, but you're talking about information in regards to the offer itself, potentially like their close date, are they flexible here and there? And that's the kind of information, I think you want to avoid maybe the makeup of the family and other things like this that are outside of the terms on the paper and also have potential to get you into a little bit of hot water. I know recently one of the things is, the buyer love letters. Oh, we love the property. We have 2 kids, a dog, and all this. Recently a few places came out and said, look, a lot of those are dancing really close to fair housing violations. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't do it. You can make up your mind. Your buyer's really who's going to choose that. But when you're having a conversation, you're finding more information about individual aspects of the offer and their motivations and their flexibilities, and looking for places where that negotiation can be solved later on.
Yeah, I like to find out if they're negotiable on the close date, for example. If they have a 45-day close and my client really wants to close in 30 days, I want to pay how they, why 45 days? Would they be able to close sooner? If they came in with a price that I guess it doesn't matter whether it's a seller's market, buyer's market, but would your clients be willing to, is this their highest and best? Would they be willing to come up? Would they be willing to meet in the middle? I mean, these are all questions that I have asked over the years before I even present the offer to my client, because I just kind of want to know how negotiable they are. One of my favorite things to ask another agent is I like to say, hey, thank you so much for your offer. How would you like me to present this offer? Is this a take it or leave it offer, or is there some flexibility there? And a lot of times that catches agents off guard. They're like, they don't know how to answer the question because they know it's not a take it or leave it. They know there's usually some flexibility. Occasionally, they're like, no, that's it. This is my client's best offer they can possibly do, and yes, present it that way. Yeah. But in most cases, I can find out how flexible and negotiable they are just by asking that simple question.
Yeah, it's really a great tool or great key, because like Josh said, a lot of agents really, they're unprepared for the question. They just assume that we're going to send an offer and everybody knows that you can counter it, right? But that might not be the buyer's intent. And, some agents will give up a lot more than you want right away. We're the market's a little different now. And this is why some of these things really come into play when you're listing properties and everything else. I mean, right now, it's an auction in some cases. You're just trying to beat that highest number. But we are returning, we'll get more into that, but there's really a time to where your skills of putting deals together matter, and finding common ground sooner than later.
Next on the list would be ignorant. As funny as that sounds, even if you know the answer, even if you know what your client would be willing to do, even if you know where your client would want to be at as far as price goes, at the end of the day,
remember, you're not the decision maker.
You're not the decision maker. Be ignorant. Just say, if someone says, hey, what is your client willing to sell the house for? I don't know. What is your client willing to pay? I always like to fire back right with a question with a question, and so.
And you don't know the answer.
Correct.
You don't know the answer. In many cases, you don't even want to know the answer. You know what I never ask my sellers? What's your bottom number? That question never comes up. I prefer not to know that answer. It's immaterial to me. I'm not going to get him his bottom number. I'm going to get him his top number. He'll decide he or she will decide what their bottom number is. I don't want to know it going in. I don't need to know it. Mm-hmm. I'm fighting for the best number possible, not the lowest possible price they'll accept.
Yeah. And I mean, just always be ignorant. If another agent asks you, hey, would your client be willing, blah, 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 just say, honestly, I don't know, or sometimes I fire back with, why are you asking me that question? Whatever, but you don't know the answer. Let me hang up. Let me call my client and ask, and I'll get back to you.
Even sometimes when you don't know. I mean, and we're not talking about simple things that you already know, hey, washer and dryer, things like that. But you'll find the right place to use it and to pull back. But overall, as a rule of thumb, you want to be more ignorant. It's not your decision to make.
Yeah, and over the years, Morgan and I, we've talked with a lot of agents who have acted like they are the decision maker. We'll ask a question or say something or present the offer, and they'll say, no, that's not going to work, or no, my client can't do that. When they truly have not even had that conversation with their client, they don't know the answer, and they're, hey, you know what? I'm sending this offer over. Will you please present it? Let me know what your client would like to do. But
yeah, and some agents will, they think their way of fighting on their client's behalf is to shoot down anything you may present, but that right there creates its own, problems, and because they back themselves into a corner a lot of times and stymie deals from getting done. Remember, it's not your decision. You don't always know the answer, and that's where you go back, present it, then you can come back with a stronger.
I agree.
Stronger voice.
Next on the list is act ethically. Treat others like you want to be treated in a negotiation. Don't lie. Be honest. Your integrity is on the line too. Agents, we all talk. We know of a number of agents out there that don't necessarily handle their transactions in a very ethical way. And so just be ethical.
Yeah. The thing is, wherever we put this on the list, it's really number one on the list. It doesn't matter where it falls, but you should enter every single situation and transaction with an ethical mindset, because no transaction is worth your license, your, namesake, your reputation out there. Not a single one is worth it. And so you always, in all cases, want to shoot for the high road, find that upper ground, and understand that, it's just not worth it. You might be tempted to, make something up or lie or find a way to cut corners, but it's not worth it. No part of it is worth it.
It seems like this is a pretty obvious one, but we have
But the ethics board would beg to differ.
Yeah, and we have agents all the time that will say, oh, hey, I'm thinking about saying this or doing this, and you're like, hey, you're lying. You're not being honest. You're not being truthful. Don't do that. Like that's going to get you in trouble. You're going to get caught in a lie, whatever the situation may be. Like even saying, hey, if you don't accept our offer, we're going to go offer on this other house down the street. Unless your clients have actually told you that and they want you to share that with the other agent. But if you're just making that up, then that's going to get you in trouble. That's going to kill the negotiation.
Yeah. I mean, once again, it's a fine line, because it's perfectly okay to say, hey, we've seen a number of properties and we have a couple of them that they really like, that are options. But right now, yours is the number one, and my clients really want to make this work on your property. That's the same way of saying, hey, we could go offer down the street, without saying, hey, there's a property right down the street we're going to offer on next if you don't accept our offer.
Yep. Yeah. And that's actually the next one on the list, which is it's okay to exaggerate. We call it puffing in real estate, but it's okay to say, if someone says, hey, do you have any offers or any activity, yada, yada. Yes, you know what? The activity is great. The feedback's been great. We've got a couple people circling right now. It wouldn't surprise me if in the next week we receive, or the next couple of days, we receive an offer or multiple offers. Like saying all of that is completely okay. But don't say, yes, we have an offer when you don't have an offer.
Yeah. And again, it's a balance thing. You know what I mean? If you're going to be the agent that is going to over exaggerate your activity on every single listing, every single time, that's going to follow you. And agents in the know are going to be like, yeah, Bob's going to tell me there's 30 showings today again, when in fact we know that there's not a single showing all week, and things like that. So you've got, you got to know when to massage that a little bit. But, yes, to talk up the house, to talk up someone's a little interest in that in the right way, without going too far and saying things that would be too much. That's really what we're advising here.
Yeah. And so not last and lead. We've got a few left here. Keep the ball in play.
Oh yeah, no matter what. This is definitely a key. And a lot of people a lot of people don't do it, but you always want to try to keep the ball in play.
Yeah. I mean, unless the offer is so ridiculous, so unworkable, so whatever.
It's a non-starter.
If it's a non-starter, if the offer just came in hundreds of thousands of dollars below whatever the situation, or the terms are just so ridiculous, in that situation, yeah, would it be okay to go back and say, hey, you know what, my clients received your offer. They say, thank you very much, but at this point in time, they're not going to counter, they're not going to accept, whatever.
Yeah.
Please, if your clients can do better, please resubmit. We'd be happy to work with you.
But the really thing is, keep the ball in play, avoid drawing lines in the sand. Even when you're going back and forth, even on a BINSR or other small negotiation, whenever you draw that line in the sand and say, we're not going a second past this, that's often the times where you start to really get people to butt heads, because one side is not being fair. They are being now unreasonable in some ways. And many times, had you not drawn that line, this wouldn't come up. You can negotiate strongly without saying it's make it or break it, dishwasher or bust.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
No, exactly. And I mean, unless your client actually says, hey, look, I will cancel the contract if I don't get that dishwasher. Well, then, yeah, go and share that with the other agent. Hey, you know what? And remember, you've already befriended the other agent. You guys are working together to keep the deal together, which is great for both your clients. You're saying, hey, you know what? That this is a deal breaker for my client. He really wants a dishwasher for whatever reason, and so let's figure out a way how we can make this happen.
Yep.
Maybe the seller will take a credit. Maybe, whatever it is, like
100%, because, and this goes back to all the other things too, because, you don't know unless you know. And if you know, then that's different. And now it's time to share that. Like, I know that this is 100% a deal breaker for my client. Now, he's asked you to draw the line in the sand. Sometimes you're forced to draw it, but you shouldn't lie about that because you think that the fictional Bob is going to smile a little brighter that you got him a new dishwasher when in fact he really couldn't care less about it. It's those times when you want to find the right approach, but avoid drawing that line in the sand unless you're instructed to do so.
Yeah, and even in situations where we've received lowball offers on properties, we still encourage our clients to counter. A lot of times it might just be like a small count, $5,000 off the price or whatever like that, which shows, hey, look, we're not going to budge too much off. You guys came in so low. Had you come in a little bit higher, maybe we would be having a serious negotiation right now. But yes, my $5,000 counter to you is showing that we are negotiable. We are willing to negotiate.
I love to say too, hey, we sent you a counter. We're giving you a second opportunity to present a reasonable offer, because clearly your first offer was not reasonable, but we are showing you we're negotiable. And by doing this, we're going back to you and giving you a second opportunity to come to the table with something a lot better. Mm-hmm. And in that case, when they make their next offer, you're going to know if they're real or not. They're either going to make that move to dramatically close the gap, or they won't. And you, in some cases, know it's kind of dead in the water.
Yeah, and in most cases, we want everything in writing, but I think it's okay too when the two parties are so far apart to come back with a verbal offer, to come back and say, hey, you know what, we're just so far apart. I don't want to even put this in writing. My client doesn't even want to waste his or her time putting this in writing, but they are willing to go to this. If that works for you, go call your client. If that works for them, let me know. We'd love to work with you.
Yep.
So, but also on that same note, we do like to have almost everything in writing because we want to see the big picture. It's not always just about price. We want to see all the terms. And someone may call up and say, hey, will you take blah, 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 $500,000 with a 30-day close? I don't know. I don't know what my clients want to do. Put it in writing. I'll send it over to my client and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. Verbal offers, as we know, they're unenforceable. So they're great for a little back and forth on some things. But you really want that in writing when the rubber meets the road. So you know exactly what you're presenting and what you're negotiating. I'm sure many of you can count on both hands the times where an agent's told you X, Y, and Z about a contract. You said, great, put it in writing. And then they come back with something that's A, B, and D, and G in there, which they never mentioned whatsoever. So you got to get it in writing to see what exactly you're working with and negotiating. And, before you even negotiate the contract, in most cases, you don't want to present that verbal offer because it's subject to change and most likely will.
Yep. And last but not least, always be practicing. With negotiation, you can always sharpen your skills. You can always get better. There's some great books out there that you can read. There's some great podcasts you can listen to. Even role playing with another agent, I think is great. But you should always be practicing your negotiation. I know that Morgan and I have come so far over the last 17 years when I look back at the first even 5 years in real estate and what we knew and didn't know back then and how we negotiate and how we act now today, it's like night and day, completely different. So always be practicing, always looking to get, always be looking to get better and sharpen that skill of negotiation. There are a few tips though that I want to kind of throw out there really quick. They didn't quite fit into our presentation as far as that goes, but here's a few tips that we like to incorporate. Number one, negotiate on your time. When another agent calls up, if I'm not in the mood to have that conversation, if I'm not quite mentally prepared, emotionally prepared, whatever the situation may be, it's okay to let that phone call go to voicemail.
Yep.
And if anything, that agent's going to leave some information about what they want to discuss with you on the voicemail. And that way you can prepare yourself to have that conversation and potentially get through that negotiation. So once again, negotiate on your time, let it go to voicemail. If you need to call the guy back or girl back in 30 minutes, that's fine. That no one's going to be upset with that.
Yeah. On that same note too, I'm also a firm believer, especially if you know that this response that you just received back is going to maybe go over like a ton of bricks for your client. A lot of times it's better to send that to them and set up a time to discuss it with them. You're sitting, once again, you got to remove your emotions so that the response comes over and this upsets you for whatever reason. The last thing you want to do is call up your client and be like, I can't believe what the buyer just sent back in this counter. This is the worst thing I've ever seen, and so forth and so on, and really let your emotions run the conversation, because what's going to happen is your client is going to get right upset with you and get their big stick and draw a line in the sand, and you probably just potentially lost that deal by the way you approached the negotiation or the deal-making section of that. So it's a great thing to send over bad news beforehand. Let them read it, digest it, think about it even for an hour or two, and then call and have a cool, calm, and collected conversation and present their options of how you can move the deal forward. Or if they really want to draw that line, that's an option too, but it has its ramifications as well.
Yeah, and if you need to buy yourself a few hours, it's okay to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to be out showing properties for the next 2 or 3 hours. Can I call you at 4 o'clock? Or, hey, you know what? I'm going to be in the meeting for the next hour or two. Can I call you when my meeting's over and we can discuss and go over all your options?
You just never want to make that phone call when your blood pressure is rising and you're a little upset, you're frustrated with that agent. You want to calm down a little bit, and so that you can be the consultant and
think logically.
Yeah, think logically, just kind of breathe.
Yeah, and then another tip that we incorporate is as far as price goes, negotiate in smaller increments. And what I mean by this is that let's say the house is listed at 500,000. Someone throws an offer over at 400,000. Instead of coming back and let's say you're trying to meet in the middle, instead of coming back at 490, 480, 470, in $10,000 increments, maybe you make your first big leap at the beginning. Maybe you come back and you reduce by $20,000.
Yep.
Then the next one's 15,000, the next one's 10, the next one's 5. What it does is it shows that your client's slowing down, they're getting to the stopping point. They're not just going to go 10 and 10 and 10 and 10 over and over and over again.
But also odd numbers are okay too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so many times in real estate, sometimes we get too focused on the round numbers of 10, and it's like, oh, we were taking 10 and then 15 and these different things where in reality, $1,000 or $2,000 probably will get the deal done. Does it always have to be 5? No, it doesn't, and so use some of those odd numbers as your finding middle ground as well, instead of just jumping in $5,000, $10,000 increments.
And one of the other tips, actually our tip list is probably like 20 tips long, but the other things that we wanted to share with you.
You guys want to eat lunch at some point, right?
Yeah. Leave furniture out of the offer. I think
Right.
Once again, it could be an obvious one. Maybe there's some agents that have done it differently, but we like to keep the furniture completely.
Lenders have to have it.
Yeah, the lenders don't want to see it in the offer, and even if it's a cash offer, writing the furniture in, it just complicates the deal. Focus on just the real estate, the terms, the price, everything else, and then once you get it under contract, then you can negotiate the furniture and a separate bill of sale during the inspection period. That's our recommendation. That's what we do. It's just sometimes there's a piece of furniture that the seller thinks is more valuable or isn't willing to give up, and the buyer thinks it's less valuable and they really want it, and so we just advise our clients, let's keep the furniture out of the deal, we'll negotiate it afterwards.
Yeah, and on that same note, in deals, I like to come to a general understanding about the furniture, but save the nitty-gritty for that 10-day inspection period, because especially if it's going to gum up the works too much of really getting the house under contract, which is the main goal. The furniture, you can argue over the nightstand later on. You don't want it to hold up your couple of $1 million sale. And so, you have a general understanding about how it's going to go, but maybe individual pieces excluded to be named later. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. So,
yeah. All right. Well, that's it for the art of negotiation. That comes from, once again, all of our experience over the years and all the deals we've negotiated and whatnot. And we're glad that we could share that with you, but we still have the market update and report that we want to get into with you guys.
Yeah, we hope you guys enjoyed that and definitely found a few things, that are helpful, and just some best practices things that you can use in your own business and things to think about, little gold nuggets, little takeaways, because we really do think that the more you put these tips and practices into place, you're going to see more success in your real estate business. We all want to get the first offer we make accepted, rather than the third, fourth, or fifth. We want to lessen the amount of time that we spend with each client banging your head against the wall trying to get a deal to stick. And so anything you can do to try to get that first house that they fell in love with under contract, or on the sales side, the first buyer that comes to the table, when you can put that together rather than offer after offer, it's, as we know, your dollar per hour increases, but we're not focused on that. We're focused on getting the deal put together.
Sure. Yeah. Your clients have goals, and we want to help them achieve their goals and their dreams and everything else. And so that's where we come into play to put those deals together. So
transitioning now into the market, a few different things. Everybody kind of has. If you go back to the camera real quick, Christine. Sorry. She's yeah. But just kind of transitioning. I think what's on everybody's mind in the Phoenix Business Journal recently was, is the market going to crash in 2022? I think right now everybody's really kind of thinking about it because they've seen what's happened over there over the last year and are just, kind of feeling and knowing where prices are at, knowing where some of the comps at and stuff. So it's kind of on everybody's mind. But the biggest thing, we both say to that is, no, it's very unlikely that we're going to see any kind of crash.
Not in Arizona.
No, and we'll get into more of the nitty gritty, but let's just kind of preface it by that. No, a crash is not happening. The builders are still buying land like hotcakes, and there's some other things too. But one of the things that, so when we're looking at in Arizona, like what made the market so hot? What are some of the things that we've all experienced? How come we did have such a run up? And one of the number one reasons is because of the number of people relocating to our state. We've seen a dramatic increase in buyers. We've always had been a state where a lot of people have relocated, but since COVID and even before, those numbers are just going up and up and up. So we're really seeing our population boom, and this map does a great job of kind of showing that. Obviously, anything in the you see Utah and Idaho are just off the charts right now. Idaho especially. I know the Boise market was even appreciating faster than Arizona. So because of the affordability, and same thing with Utah. But you can see anything there in that next darker shade of blue is growing by 1 to 1.5% per year, which may not sound like a lot, but that's a boatload of people when you're talking about a state like Arizona, literally adding hundreds of thousands of new residents each and every year. And we've done so for years. So that makes up a big difference. Looking at that, where are all these people coming from? That's a question you might ask, but
Illinois, clearly.
Yeah, Illinois. Right now, 18%, so almost 20% of our current buyers are coming from out of state. So if you didn't know that, that's 1 out of 5 deals is someone moving here or buying a second home coming from out of state to purchase in Arizona. And our biggest draws are San Francisco, LA, and Chicago. I know a lot of you have worked with buyers, from Chicago, from the Bay Area, and from LA. So, we're seeing just a swarm of Californians heading across the border.
Yeah, even if they're not quite ready to move here right now, a lot of them are buying second homes here that they'll use occasionally. And then once they officially retire in a few years, then move over full time. But, we get calls every single week from all over the country.
Definitely. And, so that's really moved, as we saw that have seen this population increase, that's helped push our prices up, especially as people come from California and Chicago, other areas that are more expensive. For a while there, we were looking quite on sale, and a lot of them are equity rich from their sale in wherever their state, so they're coming in as cash buyers, and in many ways helping push those prices up. So some of the things that push the prices up were the amount of cash buyers from out of state, and also our institutional buyers who were snatching up any inventory they could get their hands on. So when you're dealing with just affordability, this really starts to ramp up a lot. And we all saw that. If you go to that next chart, Christine, with affordability. Yeah, so we saw this. What you're seeing on this map is affordability has really sharply been decreasing since COVID, since the second quarter of 2020. We were doing really pretty well in Arizona, but we've trended down a lot and have now fallen below where our wages and on the average affordability list. So that's something to kind of keep in mind is, buyers are really noticing that, and they were pushing prices up, but you're starting to get a lot of buyer fatigue because prices have gone so high so fast. Especially for your average Arizona buyer whose maybe income hasn't kept up and didn't buy a house 2 years ago, and in some ways have felt like they missed the boat because they were on the sidelines renting, and now prices are 30% more than they were.
Yeah, on top of interest rates rising.
Yeah, and then some of the things you've got interest rates coming up. So that affordability is definitely something to keep an eye on going forward, and it's factoring a lot into our current kind of leveling off. So let's take a look at the market cycle, on this next slide. So really this outlines your typical market cycle, whether this can be a stock, but in this case it's really more real estate centric. But I mean, these emotions exhibit themselves in all markets as it goes through really, the cycle. And so what we're really feeling right now, lots of investors and sellers are still at that euphoria stage where it's high prices and we're paying it, but the buyers have really moved over towards unease, and some of our local buyer demand is dropping because of this, because of how quickly prices have ran up. So, you know, it's just kind of interesting to see. And as we really look in, so the question is like, where does that leave us at right now? You know, we're in a place to where normally this time of year, you know, in the fall, we're going to see a lot of kind of cooling, right? I mean, you see that.
Yeah, inventory will typically drop off a little bit with the holidays.
Yeah, and demand drops off in inventory. It's typically a great time if you're a buyer to be in the market, because you maybe don't have the same competition you did in the spring, and there's a little bit more out there to choose from. You might be able to negotiate a better deal, and that's your typical year. But really, that isn't really weighing into it as much as the buyer fatigue is just, you know, really that's our main reason for the market kind of cooling a little bit. We are still seeing supply numbers tick up, but we're still way down on number of supply, and that's probably the biggest factor. Still pushing the market and making it a seller's market. It's just there's not that much out there to buy, but demand has been dropping a little bit.
Yeah, it's still a hot seller's market, but instead of seeing, you know, 20 multiple offers, maybe you're seeing 10.
Yeah, you definitely, you know, it's usually in quarter four that really the demand declines until we get back into that real spring season. But you know, right now we've got less iBuyer demand. Zillow paused buying, and there's not a lot of seasonal supply for the low end. So looking at this, so this is the Cromford Market Index, and this number has been steadily coming down. It's just kind of looking at the overall market and where it is. A balanced market in the middle one is at 100. That's balanced between seller and buyer. So as you see, we're still heavily into the fact that it's a seller's market, but it is leveling out, and it is coming down. It's not moving down as fast as it did in 2007, 2008, but we are cooling off a bit. And a lot of that is because of prices moving up and everything. Supply is still, you know, it's a little better. It's not as bad as it was. So if we can stay here, we expect it to be a very still strong seller's market, but without the frenzy, and it's normalizing. You know, we think as 2022 progresses, we're going to get more and more to normal. Some of the things that really could impact that is like if interest rates do tick up, that's, I think, for a lot of the average buyers, going to help kind of put the brakes on.
Yeah, or the stock market crashing.
Yeah, well, that would be a big thing that I think would give a lot of people some pause. But you know, so kind of some final thoughts on this is, you know, it's an extreme seller's market. It's still in many ways a frenzy, you know, but it's cooling and definitely starting to normalize. You know, in a lot of areas of the valley, a lot of the demand has been driven by the iBuyer who are buying up, you know, and also the institutional buyer purchasing property. So a lot of investors, which is not a great sign. And they, for a while, were even overpaying considerably. They were beating out your average everyday buyer by quite a bit in some cases, especially throughout the East Valley and areas of the West Valley. You know, they were willing to pay even 10% or so over what an already exaggerated price. So they've started slowing down on some of those purchases. So that's going to be kind of good news for your average buyer. But if they pull out too quick, it might really affect the market a little bit. Not a drop, but you know, we'll see more inventory. Another thing I wanted to mention is conventional loan limits have been increased or will increase coming next year to 625,000, which is great news for most of the valley, that we're finally getting that up. You know, Scottsdale still feels light, you know, because on the average home, there's not a lot out there under that price point in the sixes. So
basically, to sum up, in the Phoenix metropolitan area, we believe that next year should still be a pretty darn good seller's market, unless something like the stock market crashes or some other catastrophic event happens that we don't foresee. But it still should be a pretty good, but coming down, cooling down just a little bit, seller's market into 2022.
Yep, and we're happy to see it return to a little more normal, a little less frenzy. We're still going to see, I think, an elevated number of transactions. It's still an amazing time to be an agent. It's still a great time to buy. Are we going to see 30% appreciation? No, definitely not. But we're probably still going to see pretty decent. Definitely prices are not going to drop anytime soon. So that's something to keep in mind too, is the sticker shock I know some of our buyers have experienced. It'll take a few months, but eventually it'll start to become that dreaded new normal that we keep hearing about. So.
All right, guys. Well, questions, Justin, did any questions, anything that we can address?
We do, yeah. We've got a couple in here. Let's see. We've got when the listing agent is lying by saying they have another offer when in fact they don't, how can we call them out on it and know for sure?
That's a great question. And it's definitely a tough, it's tough to say because it's hard to ever say if you know for sure that they don't have this mysterious other offer.
Yeah, I mean, once again, every agent's different, every situation's different. If it's an agent that has a history of maybe lying or exaggerating, then obviously you can keep that in mind. But as far as being able to prove that they have another offer or not, I always like to give people the benefit of the doubt. If they say that they have an offer, I'll kind of poke and prod, ask some questions about that other offer to see how
it compares to our offer.
Yeah, and you'll know quickly if the guy or girl agent that's representing the seller is kind of if they're stuttering or maybe unsure of how to respond to some of your questions, then maybe the offer is not real. But a lot of times if someone says they have another offer, they're being honest, they're being legit, it is what it is, and you just have to deal with it at that point.
Yeah, it's going to change in a lot of situations. I mean, if you think it's a false other offer and you have pretty good idea that it's not there, well, then you can just more or less negotiate as if there's not another offer. But at the same time, if you're calling on a property you know is probably going to receive other offers and they told you they already have one, I mean, sometimes it's just best to proceed assuming there is that other offer and your client doesn't maybe need to do a little better. But yeah, it's a tricky one on when agents are going to lie about that.
Yeah, there's no great way to call them out.
No, they're not going to send you the offer. They're not going to prove it to you.
Yeah.
So you just have to kind of take their word for it.
Cool. Awesome, guys. And then Patty, any suggestions on working with Open Door? Hard to befriend when you really have no human contact. Sad face.
Yeah. No, I mean, unfortunately, there are becoming, Open Door, Zillow, and all that have definitely made an impact on our market more than anywhere else in the country. It's still a numbers game, and you do what you can with that, but yeah.
I mean, obviously, you cannot befriend a computer screen, a company that relies on technology. There's no emotion or anything there. So yeah, I mean, in that situation, sad face. It is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just trying to work with your buyer to help them understand that and understand that the emotions really are going to be taken out of this one, and the main thing that's going to matter is their offer, terms, price, closing, qualifications.
Cool. Looks like that's all. Anybody else have questions? You can go and drop it in the comment box. I just wanted to make, I guess a comment is, Morgan, I don't know if you remember, but we did a deal together. It was last year before I joined the Rock title team up in Belmonte, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's interesting to be on this side because looking back, I totally can see these tips and everything you guys are talking about, making it, friending the agent and, being a friend and all these tips and everything. It really was probably one of the smoothest transactions I personally had. So, incorporating these strategies and everything, I can really see making you be able to win more deals and in the best interest of your client.
Hey, Justin, I have a few direct message questions.
Yeah.
What are a couple favorite one-liners that you guys use in your negotiations?
One-liner. Sorry, we just got frozen for a
Sorry,
second.
yeah, but no, Justin, thanks for saying that. And just a real quick comment on that. And I think it was in our presentation, but you want to be genuine. People appreciate authenticity. And so when we say befriend them, you don't have to go so over the top that it's completely fake.
Right.
But at the same time, I mean, it's a good situation. If you have a listing and now an agent's bringing you an offer, great, awesome. That means we can make our clients, we can get our clients both what they want and put it together. Same thing in reverse. Your buyer they found a house, they want something they want to buy. Great, awesome. Let's help them put this together. So honestly, I think you go into every transaction looking for the good and expecting a good outcome. And I think that'll help things go smoother because it really is, it's easy. It's like, okay, we're going to work with this person. We're both going to work towards our goals. So it's really that authenticity and genuine. I think that's Justin, why through that, we worked so well together because that was the objective for both of us. It's just,
I think that's the word, authenticity. Absolutely.
It makes every deal go smoother. And once again, you're working with this person for the next 30 to 45 days. Like, might as well have a great 30 to 45 days than one where you guys are just butting heads the entire time.
Totally. You're going to talk to them a lot.
Yeah.
Yep.
Too much.
Never know when you're going to work with them again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Christine, did you guys catch that question Christine asked?
Well, what was the question?
One-liners.
Do you have any, one-liners that you used in your negotiations?
I do, let me think. I do love Josh's, just reemphasize that again. When you're listing a property and someone presents an offer, it could go reverse too. But when you first get it, hey, how do you want me to present your client's offers? Is this their highest and best? Yeah. Question, and let them kind of talk from there is a great one to move forward with.
It's more question based, I would say. That as far as one-liners, it definitely would not be like a statement, but I think it would just be, coming up with questions to be able to kind of get some more information out of the other party
to find the solution.
Yeah, because everyone, a lot of times most people kind of play kind of close to their chest and they don't want to give up too much info. But it's our job to try and get as much information so that we can go back to our client, because our client's probably going to ask the questions anyways. Mm-hmm. So if we can already come prepared with all the questions answered, that makes it a lot easier to put together a couple options on how to respond.
Yeah, and sometimes if you're at a sticking point, and this is kind of a one-liner, but it does work. And it's, hey, what do we need to do to put this deal together? What does my client need to do to put this deal together? And sometimes, it's just as simple as they say, look, we're at 755, we need to be like 758, or whatever. And just along those lines. But a lot of times it's maybe not as bad as you thought. You're just asking them, hey, just let me know what it needs to do. And then you can go back to your client and say, hey, they said you go to this will put it together.
Yeah. And I like using the words fair and reasonable, because everyone can connect with fair and reasonable. Just as humans, people are willing to put a deal together that is fair and reasonable. And so, I'll use that verbiage quite a bit because I think it resonates really well. And
and psychologically, the other side doesn't want to be unfair or unreasonable. Yeah. And so when you've got to you got to mix it in at the right time. You know, if you're making an opening lower offer, maybe it's not the best time to say, hey, this is
fair and reasonable. Yeah, correct. Yeah, use it when your clients are being fair and reasonable.
Totally.
Awesome. We've got a question from, oh, sorry, Kristen, you got another one?
Oh, I think I was going to say the same thing. Go ahead.
Olivia is asking, if you're representing the seller and the buyer's agent, ask what the highest offer is before submitting theirs. Is it wise to tell them?
So we've gone over this like a couple times, especially in like how to negotiate and how to negotiate and win in the multiple offer environment, which is another webinar. You can reach out to us if you're interested in watching that recording. As we, you know, in this case, in a lot of cases, it somewhat depends on how your seller wants you to play that. And we believe in kind of having that conversation beforehand, especially if you know you're going to get multiple offers, because you can say, hey, do you want me to hold everything in and not give anyone, you know, too much guidance on where they need, or would you prefer that I have an open auction process? And that can help you too, because on one hand, you're treating all agents the same. You're saying, look, the seller's asked me not to reveal, but know that they're very strong offers. So you really have to put your best forward. The other one says, hey, my seller's asked me to just have it as an open auction. Obviously, there's some different terms, but the best offer is $355. That's your number to beat. And so it is kind of two different ways. And I prefer not to choose necessarily one or the other, but to kind of let it in my, because some sellers want it or feel really strongly about it one way versus the other. And it's good to know that prior to you doing the opposite and, you know, potentially getting in trouble for it. Trouble with the seller, you know, not in trouble, but like them being disappointed in you because you told everybody the number and they really didn't want you giving anyone the number.
Yeah,
so
it's really up to your seller and,
it really is.
and what they want to do.
Yep.
Cool. Looks like we got two more. Cheryl's asking, suggestion to bring more value to negotiating the commission on a listing.
Ooh.
No, this is definitely a great question and something we coach around quite a bit too. So within the listing presentation, just a really quick, you really should be hitting, and I'll just give a really quick summary, but you've got to you want to hit upon bullet points on how you're adding value to the transaction that other people aren't. And as you're building your case point by point, you know, when you do get down to commission, you have the ability to circle back to all of these points that you've outlined, that how you do exceed, you know, the average production of the other agent, the average marketing, and all these other points, to where when it does come time to commission, in most cases, that seller will agree with you how you are delivering extra value, and therefore your full commission.
Yeah, and there's lots of different ways you can do this. You know, once again, by demonstrating all your value, hopefully they don't even question the commission. They're blown away by everything that you provide and will do for them. So if you do a great job on that, typically you won't have anyone that will question you on your commission. But if they do come back and say, hey, are you willing to, you know, reduce your commission? A lot of times, I mean, there's lots of different things that we'll say, but we'll say, hey, no, you know, we're not willing to reduce our commission. If you want to offer a lower than 3% commission, which we don't recommend to the other agent, you know, you can certainly do that.
Yeah. I don't know. She had another.
Well, I was gonna say also, you know, a lot of times what we will do is that if we actually bring the buyer to the, you know, the buyer's unrepresented by another agent or another brokerage.
Open house, marketing,
yeah,
online efforts.
A lot of times we will make an adjustment in the commission. So instead of it being 6%, let's say we take 6%, maybe we'll say, hey, if we bring the buyer, it'll be 5%. And that way we can say, hey, look, if we bring the buyer, which we do, you know, over 10% of the time, we'll go ahead and reduce it down to 5%. It's a win-win. You know, we get a win for our efforts that we put into selling your property, and you have to pay 6%. So
yeah,
there's ways to kind of get around that.
Yeah, and I guess just to sum this up, because it is a situation that comes up a lot. So I think people, but we're firm believers in in a very stair-stepped approach. And again, going back, there's a lot of things you can do to win that listing agreement that don't involve, first off, don't ever negotiate in full percentages. Even 0.5% are too much. It very much adds up. And you can find other ways, other keys to fit in that lock. You could potentially offer a percentage discount off of your fee. You could offer to pay for some repairs. There's different things that you can find, and it's different for every seller. So that's the thing. There's not just one thing like, oh, this is the guarantee. You'll get a full commission every time. So you need to explore that, find some things, find some pain points for that seller. Sometimes they're just asking because they feel if they don't ask the commission, or if they don't ask the commission of will you reduce, then they're doing a disservice. But in many cases, they say, will you reduce your commission? And say, this is what I charge. It's a fair price. And that's okay with them.
And a lot of times hey, I had to ask.
I had to ask. And so that's another thing. When you go in there, don't just automatically assume that they're going to expect you to reduce your commission. That's a big thing that newer agents automatically do, and we coach them on how to get around it with this, and we go into a lot more detail. But it's a big thing. Don't just go in there assuming that you're going to have to give up 50% or a couple percentage points, in order to get the listing. Go in prepared.
Awesome. Great stuff. And then we got one last question here. Would you recommend providing comps to support your lower than list price offer? Or is that insulting to the listing agent and seller because they already know these comps?
Okay, I like this question. And of course, again, it's going to vary. However, I do think in many cases, it's perfectly okay to send over a few comps of how your buyers came to this, this number. You're not going to maybe send an entire list, but you're going to choose a few, and they probably have. But at least at the very least, if you are lower and they're up higher, you're asking them, hey, well, can you answer for like this comp? I mean, this looks, it's pretty much apples for apples, but you guys are 50,000 higher. How come, where did you get the extra value? And so it's fair. I don't think if it's done in a, courteous, polite way where you're trying to put a deal together, that you're not badgering them necessarily. You're just saying, hey, we looked at these comps. Here's what we came up with, and ask them to send you back any of their own comps that may justify their price. And sometimes they have them. Sometimes they're just set a number up there for no reason.
Yeah, I always like to ask, how did you come up with the list price? Or where did you guys come up with that? Is there something I'm missing? Maybe is there a comp I'm missing? Are there some upgrades that I don't know about? So how did you guys come up with that price? And then, but I would say I wouldn't recommend.
I wouldn't do it on every deal.
Well, definitely wouldn't do it on every deal, but then I wouldn't recommend. I personally wouldn't recommend sending over like a PDF or with actual comps. Maybe I'd refer to, hey, the one down the street sold for, and maybe I'd have the address, MLS number, but I don't think as agents we need to send over attachments or links to other comps, because once again, it could be a little insulting, especially if you're working with a seasoned agent. They're like, yeah, I know, I saw that one. I probably walked it.
But I think it's fair. I think it is fair to ask them to account for these other comps. They might have a reason. And a lot of times, as we know, pictures don't see. Sometimes the pictures will make the house look okay, when in reality, the place was a dump. And every buyer saw it, but in pictures, they cleaned it up enough for pictures. You just don't know some of those things.
Nice.
Good question.
Awesome, guys. Very value-packed webinar again. All the comments and feedback in the chat box is phenomenal. So again, thank you both for your time for putting this together. Also, I just want to point out that I included a link to the Mojo team's YouTube channel in the chat box. Please go click that link, hit subscribe. This webinar, along with the previous ones that we've done, will be on there as well. There's a bunch of other open house tips, negotiating, a bunch of cool content. So make sure to go check that out and subscribe. Christine, did you have any other DMs in there that you had questions or?
I did not, but I am going to put on the screen our awesome team manager's contact information. So let me go ahead and put that.
Yeah, if you guys, once again, we're always looking for a few great agents. So if you think, whether you're seasoned or unseasoned, if you think you might be a good fit or want to, once again, kind of get coached up and have some accountability or support, or, you know.
We have awesome systems, honestly, for agents with years of experience. You know, we've got amazing agents on our team, amazing back-end support, and also a great track history of taking agents, good producing agents, and doubling and tripling their business, not just from coaching, but, you know, leads back. I mean, there's so many things, and so Heather can get into some of it. We've got some videos and stuff too that we suggest you watch, but you know, a lot of times you don't know what you need until you need it, but we're definitely there and have built great system that our agents are thriving in.
Yeah, and thanks again, guys, for joining us, and thanks to Christine and Dana for all your guys' help. They're our Director of Operations and Director of Marketing, so we appreciate you guys. And
yep.
That's all we got for you.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
You guys have a great day.
All right, bye, guys. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.